Kade Winslow didn't think twice, he just threw his body over the stranger when the scaffolding above them gave out with a gut-wrenching groan and a crash that sent metal and wood flying. The woman beneath him screamed, hands flying to her head, but Kade kept his arms locked tight around her, shielding her from the debris that rained down in front of the Manhattan Cafe. Dust filled the air, people shouted, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rough as he pulled back just enough to look at her. She blinked up at him, stunned. Her sunglasses were askew, her coat dusted with powdered concrete, but her eyes, bright green and wide, were fixed on his face. "I think so," she breathed. He got to his feet, offering her a hand. "You sure?" She took it, her grip warm and steady. "Yeah, thanks to you." Kade didn't wait around for applause. "You should get checked out just to be safe." "What about you?" "I've had worse," he said, brushing off his jacket. "You okay getting home?" "I live nearby. I'll be fine." She paused. "You really just jumped on me like that?" "Didn't seem like a good time to ask permission," he said, giving her a crooked half-smile. Then he turned back to where his 5-year-old daughter was still safe inside the cafe, her little face pressed to the glass. "Daddy." Emily came barreling out the door the second she spotted him, her tiny arms wrapping around his waist. "You're okay." "I'm fine, baby," he said, crouching to her level. "Told you I'd be right back." The woman watched them, something soft flickering across her face. "This is Emily," Kade said, glancing up at her. "She's my whole world." Emily peeked at the woman. "You're pretty," she said with the blunt honesty of a kindergartner. The woman laughed, crouching beside them. "Thank you, Emily. I'm Sienna." She looked at Kade again. "You saved my life." He shook his head. "Just did what anybody would." "No," she said quietly, "not everybody would." There was something about her voice, warm, steady, but her clothes were expensive. Her heels had probably cost more than his rent. Still, she didn't act like she knew it. "I owe you," she said, straightening. "At least let me buy you both lunch." Kade hesitated. He never liked feeling like a charity case, especially not in front of his daughter, but Emily tugged on his hand. "Can we, Daddy, please?" He looked at Sienna. "You sure?" She smiled. "Positive." They walked back into the cafe, now cleared of dust and chaos, and took a small booth near the window. Emily chattered happily while Sienna listened, asking thoughtful questions and laughing at all the right moments. Kade watched her, trying to figure her out. She didn't act like someone who lived in a penthouse or had assistants trailing behind her. But the way she held herself, elegant posture, understated jewelry, tailored coat, he knew money when he saw it. Still, she didn't look at him like he was less than. "So what do you do, Kade?" she asked, sipping her coffee. He looked at his chipped mug, then back at her. "Construction. Got laid off last month, been picking up side jobs since." Her gaze didn't change. "That explains why you didn't flinch when the scaffolding came down." He chuckled. "Yeah, you get used to buildings making weird noises. Still doesn't make it any less terrifying." Emily was busy coloring the kids' menu when Sienna leaned in a little. "What about her mom?" she asked gently. "Gone. Walked out when Emily was 2. Said she wasn't cut out for diapers and daycare." He kept his tone even, but Sienna's eyes darkened with sympathy. "I'm sorry. Don't be. We're doing all right." Sienna looked at Emily, then back at him. "I can see that." They talked for nearly 2 hours. Kade kept thinking she'd glance at her watch or take a call, but she didn't. She was just there, present, laughing when Emily told a joke, asking about Kade's favorite pizza spot like she wasn't used to private chefs and wine pairings. When they finally stood to leave, Emily hugged her tightly. "You're nice," she said, eyes squinting up at her. "You should come to the park with us." Sienna looked at Kade. "If that's okay," he hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." The three of them walked to the nearby park. Emily raced to the swings, and Kade pushed her while Sienna sat on the bench, watching them with a soft smile. "You're a good dad," she said. "Thanks," he said, brushing his hand through his hair. "I try." As the sun started dipping behind the buildings, Sienna stood. "I should go, but I'd like to see you both again." Kade looked at her, surprised. "You serious?" "I am." He studied her. "You're not from around here, are you?" "I am," she said. "Just a different part of the city." He didn't press. "All right, then." She pulled a small card from her coat and handed it to him. "No company logo, just her name and a number. Call me," she asked. Kade nodded slowly. Yeah, I will. After she left, Emily tugged on his sleeve. Daddy. Yeah, baby, I think she's a princess, Kade laughed. Yeah, I think she might be. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have guessed, was that Sienna Westwood wasn't just some kind stranger. She was the CEO of Westwood Ventures, a millionaire many times over, and she hadn't stopped thinking about the man who'd risked his life for her even once since he walked away, and she had no intention of letting him go. Kade leaned against the doorway of the modest walk-up apartment, watching Emily as she arranged her stuffed animals according to height on the couch. Her tiny brow furrowed in concentration as she carefully balanced a floppy-eared bunny between a lion and a giraffe. The warmth of the afternoon still lingered through the open window, carrying with it the distant hum of the city. His phone sat on the counter, the plain white card untouched beside it. He hadn't called, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know what the hell he'd say. Sienna had been unexpected, not just her offer to see them again, but the way she'd looked at him. Like he wasn't a man scraping by to keep the lights on, like she didn't see the holes in his schedule or the second-hand shoes on his daughter's feet. He hadn't met many people like that. Especially not people who wore heels that didn't touch the subway. Daddy, Emily said, lifting her head. Do you think she likes pancakes? Kade blinked. Who? Sienna. He crossed to sit beside her. Why? 'Cause I was thinking, if she ever comes over, we could make pancakes. You said people like pancakes. He hesitated. Yeah, baby, most people do. Emily tapped her chin thoughtfully. Then she'll probably be our friend. Kade looked away, unsure how to explain that some people didn't stay. That some people only passed through your life like a warm breeze felt for a moment, then gone. Before he could say anything else, his phone buzzed. He picked it up. Unknown number. Hello. I hope I'm not interrupting, came Sienna's voice, smooth and unmistakably confident. He straightened. No, not at all. I was wondering, she continued, if you and Emily might be free tomorrow morning. There's a fall festival at the conservatory in Brooklyn. Hot cider, face painting, a petting zoo. I have 2 passes and I'd rather not go alone. Kade hesitated. That sounds expensive. It's already covered, she said quickly. I'd just like to spend time with you both. He glanced at Emily, who now had her ear tilted toward the phone with undisguised curiosity. You sure? He asked. I wouldn't have called if I wasn't, he exhaled. All right then. What time? 10. I can send a car. I'll get us there, he said, more firmly than necessary. Of course, she replied. I'll see you then. The line went dead. Kade stared at the phone for a moment before setting it down. Emily was already grinning. The next morning arrived with a crispness in the air that hinted at the coming winter. Kade dressed Emily in her favorite hoodie, the one with a glittery unicorn on the back, and did her hair in 2 tiny buns that bounced when she walked. He wore his cleanest jeans and a shirt that still had a faint line from the dry cleaner's tag. The conservatory grounds were bursting with color burnt orange leaves, deep red mums, and golden pumpkins lined the paths. Children ran past with painted faces, laughter echoing through the air. Food stalls filled the surrounding lawn, the scent of roasted nuts and sweet cinnamon thick in the breeze. Sienna stood just past the entrance, a soft scarf looped around her neck and sunglasses perched atop her head. She turned at the sound of their footsteps, her lips parting into a smile that felt far too warm for a woman standing alone among strangers. You made it, she said. Yeah, Kade said, adjusting Emily's backpack. We did. Sienna crouched to Emily's level. You look amazing. Are those space buns? Emily nodded proudly. Daddy did them. Sienna looked up. Impressive. I've had some practice, Kade said. They walked together, Emily running ahead to the pony rides while Kade and Sienna followed at a more careful pace. You weren't sure you were going to call, she said, not asking, stating. No, he admitted. Why not? He glanced at her. I'm not exactly in your world. Sienna met his gaze without flinching. So maybe you wake up one morning and realize this was just a nice story, a moment. And I've got to explain to my daughter why the nice lady never came back. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stopped near a cluster of hay bales and looked out over the festival. My mother used to say the only people worth keeping are the ones who show up when it's messy, she said. You didn't know me, but you didn't hesitate. You didn't freeze, you acted. That means something to me. Kade shoved his hands into his pockets. I didn't do it for a thank you. I know, she said quietly. That's why it matters. Emily came bounding back, face now painted like a tiger. I got stripes, Sienna crouched again. You look fierce. Emily roared, baring her tiny teeth. They spent the rest of the morning letting Emily run through corn mazes and pick out decorative gourds she insisted were magic. Kade watched Sienna slip easily into the chaos, crouching beside Emily to help her glue sequins onto a paper crown, laughing when a goat tried to eat her scarf at the petting zoo. It wasn't until they were walking back toward the entrance, Emily asleep in Kade's arms, that she said it. I'm not good at small talk, she said. So I'll just ask, would you ever consider dinner, just us? Kade stopped. You're serious. I don't ask things I don't mean. He looked down at his daughter, her paint-smeared cheek pressed against his shoulder. Then he looked back at Sienna. All right, he said. But only if you're not expecting me to wear a tie. She laughed, the sound low and unguarded. You can wear whatever you want, Kade, he nodded. Then yeah, I'd like that. As she walked away, disappearing into a sleek black sedan waiting at the curb, Kade stood still, heart thudding a little harder than usual, not because she was beautiful. Not because she was poised and smart and clearly from a world far more polished than his, but because for the first time in a long time, someone had looked at him and seen more than just a man trying to get through the day, and that terrified him more than falling scaffolding ever could. Kade stood outside the restaurant longer than he should have, holding Emily's tiny backpack in one hand and staring at the heavy wooden door like it might bite him. The babysitter had arrived right on time, a woman recommended by his neighbor, polite and warm with a gentle voice Emily instantly liked. Still, he'd only agreed after triple-checking references and making sure she understood the emergency contacts pinned to the fridge. He adjusted the collar of his shirt, the one he usually saved for interviews, and stepped inside. The hostess barely glanced at him before her eyes found something behind him. Mr. Winslow, he turned. Sienna was already there, rising from a table near the back, her expression unreadable. She wore a navy wrap dress and low heels, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look like she belonged in a painting, timeless, composed, and far too good for anything he could offer. But she smiled when she saw him. Not politely, not distantly, but like she'd been waiting. You came, she said as he approached. You invited me. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either. The table was tucked against a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the river. The lights from the city shimmered across the water, casting gold against the glass. A server brought over menus, but Kade already felt the weight of the place pressing in on him. Cloth napkins, candlelight, glasses that probably cost more than his toolbox. Sienna didn't seem fazed by any of it. She handed him a menu without ceremony. I figured we could talk somewhere quiet. Looks more like a place where people close business deals, he muttered. She didn't argue. I've had more dinners like that than I can count, he glanced at her. This one of them? No, this one's different, the waiter returned. Sienna ordered something with words he didn't recognize. Kade stuck to steak, medium, no frills. When the server left, he leaned back. So, no pretense anymore, right? She tilted her head. What do you mean? You're not just some woman I met on the street. Her gaze didn't waver. No. I'm not. You're rich, she nodded. I am. How rich? I own a venture firm. We've backed over 100 companies. My net worth was last estimated at just under 800 million. Kade blinked. Well. That's honest. I told you I'm not good at pretending, and yet you let me think you were just some girl with a nice coat. I didn't correct you, she said carefully, but I didn't lie. He pressed his fingers against the stem of his water glass. Why me? He asked finally. You could have anyone. Someone who knows which fork to use. Someone who doesn't have a kid asking to play hide and seek in a laundromat while I fold shirts. I don't care about forks, she said, and I like that your daughter thinks the laundromat is fun. It means you've made something ordinary feel safe. He studied her, searching for the catch. You don't think this is insane? You me? She rested her elbows on the table, fingers laced. I think I've spent too many years surrounded by people who want something from me. You didn't even want a thank you. I didn't know you were someone worth thanking. Everyone's worth thanking, she said, but not everyone's worth trusting. The food came. Kade tried not to stare at the artful arrangement on her plate. His looked like it belonged on a different menu entirely, but she didn't blink. Just cut her food and ate like the room wasn't full of people who wore cufflinks and spoke in half-laughed whispers. "I don't know how to do this," he said finally. "Do what? This, you and me." "I don't know how to fit into your world. I'm not asking you to," she said. He looked at her, steady now. "Then what are you asking, to know you better? And when you do," she held his gaze, "then we'll both decide." They finished dinner without small talk, no lists of favorite colors. No pretending they were anything other than two people trying to figure out why this thing between them felt too big to ignore. When they stepped outside, the city air had cooled. Kade turned his face into the wind, trying to clear the static in his head. "I should get back," he said. "I told the sitter I wouldn't be late. I'll walk with you. You don't have to. I want to." They walked in silence, a comfortable one, a real one. When they reached his building, he paused at the steps. "This is me." She looked up at the faded brick and cracked railing. "Can I ask something?" "Sure." "What's the hardest part of being a single parent?" He didn't answer right away. "Then, not knowing if you're enough," he said. "Not knowing if what you're doing today will make her stronger tomorrow or just leave her needing therapy." Sienna's expression shifted, no pity, but something deeper. "Respect, maybe. She's lucky to have you," he nodded. "Thanks for dinner." "Thanks for coming," he hesitated. Then leaned in and kissed her cheek, quick, deliberate, but not casual. Her breath caught the tiniest bit. Before she could say anything, he stepped inside. Upstairs, Emily was asleep with her stuffed bunny tucked under her chin. The sitter gave a quiet goodbye, and Kade stood at the window after she left, watching the street below. Sienna's car was still there, but she wasn't inside. She stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the building like she wasn't ready to let the night end. And then, finally, she turned and walked away, but not like someone leaving, like someone planning to come back. The first time Kade stepped into the Westwood Tower, he almost turned right back around. The marble floors gleamed beneath his work boots, and the receptionist's blazer had sharper tailoring than any suit he'd ever owned. He adjusted the strap of Emily's backpack over his shoulder, jaw tight as he focused on the elevator ahead instead of the stairs from the lobby. But then he caught sight of her. Sienna stood in front of the elevator, alone, her coat open over a soft gray sweater, hands tucked into the pockets like she had all the time in the world. "You came," she said, eyes lighting up not with surprise, but something gentler. "I said I would. I wasn't sure." He stepped closer. "You said you wanted us to know each other better. I figured it was time I came to your world too." She didn't say anything at first, then she pressed the elevator button. "Come on up." The penthouse was on the top floor, of course it was. The ride was silent except for the hum of the elevator. Sienna didn't try to fill the quiet. She stood beside him, her arm brushing his, like she knew this wasn't easy and didn't expect it to be. When the doors opened, he stepped out into another planet. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the living room, the skyline stretching in every direction. Warm tones softened the sleek furniture, burnished wood, thick woven rugs, light that spilled across everything like gold. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. The space spoke for itself. Before he could say anything, a small bark echoed through the apartment. A blur of white fur shot around the corner and skidded toward them. "Is that a dog?" Kade blinked. Sienna knelt, catching the puppy before it could leap onto him. "This is Nova. She's still learning not to greet people like a tornado. Emily would have loved her." "I didn't peg you for a dog person," he said. "I wasn't. Until I saw her at a rescue event and she sat on my foot until I took her home." He looked around again. "You live here alone." "I used to," she said quietly. "Now it just feels like too much space." Kade crossed to the window, hands braced against the glass. "How did you end up here? This life?" "My father built the company from nothing. I grew up in boardrooms. When he passed, I inherited everything. The business, the pressure, the expectations." He turned to her. "Is this what you wanted?" "It's what I was good at," she said. "But lately, I've been wondering if that's enough." He looked at her, really looked. "You're not what I expected," he said. "Neither are you." She walked to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of something sparkling, not wine, something citrusy. She handed him one. "I didn't bring you here to impress you. Did a hell of a job anyway." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Something's wrong." Sienna sat on the edge of the couch, fingers wrapped around her glass. I had a board meeting this morning. They want me to step away from the public eye for a while. There's talk about the accident, the photos of us at the festival, at dinner. They think I'm being reckless. And what do you think? I think they don't know the first thing about what matters. Kade lowered his glass. So what now? I told them I was taking a leave. She looked up. I want time to figure out what I want outside of all this. He didn't move. You stepping away from your empire for what? Normal life? No, she said. For something real. He crossed to her. You sure? Because my life isn't charity galas and rooftop dinners. I don't want charity galas, she said, standing. I want Sunday pancakes and sidewalk chalk. I want someone who doesn't look at me and see headlines. I want you. He didn't respond, just reached for her face and kissed her. Nothing rushed, nothing frantic. Just full, sure, and real. When they broke apart, Sienna leaned her forehead against his. Come away with me, she whispered. What? Just for a few days. You and Emily, somewhere quiet, no assistants, no headlines, no pressure. You serious? I have a place upstate. It's simple. Firewood, a lake, stars you can actually see. Let me show you that part of my life. He hesitated. Emily would love that. And you? He nodded. Yeah, I think I would too. They left the next morning. The car she sent wasn't a limousine. It was an SUV with a baby blue car seat she'd bought just for Emily and a bag of snacks Kade didn't remember packing. The driver was quiet, the road winding, and the farther they got from the city, the more Kade felt something inside him loosen. The cabin was nothing like the penthouse. Wood beams, a stone fireplace, quilts folded over the backs of chairs. Emily ran through the rooms in her socks, squealing when she found a loft with a telescope. They spent the first night making s'mores in the fire pit, Emily sticky and giggling between them. Sienna let her borrow a hoodie that hung nearly to her knees, and Kade watched them from across the flames, something sharp and unfamiliar catching in his chest. Later, when Emily was asleep and the fire had burned low, Sienna found him on the dock staring at the lake. You okay? She asked. He nodded, just thinking. I never thought I'd be here. I thought I'd spend my whole life fixing things for other people. Never thought someone might want to build something with me instead. She came to stand beside him, fingers brushing his. I want that, she said softly. With you? He turned to her, and in the silence between them, something shifted. Not a beginning, they'd already had that. This was something else. The moment when a maybe becomes a yes. 2 weeks later, they stood in a tiny courthouse just outside the city. Emily held a bouquet of daisies and wore a headband made of ribbon. Kade wore the same shirt he'd worn to dinner that first night. Sienna wore a dress that didn't cost more than a tank of gas. They said their vows in front of a judge and a handful of staff who clapped when it was done. Later, in the back of the same SUV, Emily curled between them, fast asleep. Kade looked at Sienna. You sure you're okay with all this? She leaned her head on his shoulder. I've never been surer of anything in my life. And when the car passed under the city lights again, Kade didn't feel like he was returning to the world he came from. He felt like he was stepping into the one they'd built together brick by brick, kiss by kiss, fall by messy, beautiful fall. Rain tapped softly against the windows of the brownstone as Kade set down his coffee and glanced across the room. Sienna sat on the floor surrounded by colored construction paper, glitter glue, and a very focused 6-year-old with tiger face stickers on her cheeks. Emily, he said, crossing his arms and leaning in the doorway, are you building a rocket or a zoo? Both, she said without looking up. It's a rocket zoo. The animals go to space. Duh. Sienna looked up at him over her shoulder, her mouth twitching into a grin as she wiped a streak of purple glue from her jaw. We're trying to create something that defies physics but teaches empathy. Kade stepped forward and crouched beside them. You know, I've worked on some complicated job sites, but this might be the most ambitious blueprint I've seen. Emily leaned over her cardboard base and whispered, There's a secret trapdoor under the lion exhibit. Of course there is, he said, and kissed the top of her head. The house was quiet except for the rain and the occasional rustle of paper. It had been 3 months since the quiet ceremony, and somehow, life had shifted from whirlwind to familiar. Still full of surprises, but no longer unpredictable. Sienna stood and wiped her hands on the apron she'd found at a thrift shop in Woodstock. I have to head to the gallery in an hour. They're doing the final install today. Kade raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to go in the rain? I promised the artist I'd be there. She's 17, it's her first show, and she's convinced the world's going to end if the lighting doesn't hit her sculpture just right. He stepped closer. You're good at this, not just the business side. The people's side. I've had a better teacher lately, she said, brushing her fingers down his arm. Turns out building a rocket zoo with a 6-year-old gives you perspective. Emily popped her head up. Can Daddy come too? Sienna looked over. You want your dad at the gallery? Well, yeah. He always knows how to fix stuff, and if the sculpture breaks, someone's gonna need a hammer. Kade laughed. I'll get my tool bag. Later that afternoon, the gallery buzzed with quiet energy. The space, nestled between a bookstore and a florist in Soho, was all exposed brick and polished wood floors. A handful of artists wandered between installations, murmuring about color theory and light diffusion. Kade stood near the back, watching Sienna kneel beside a panicked teenager in a hoodie covered in paint splatters. She placed a steady hand on the girl's shoulder and said something soft, something quiet, but whatever it was had the girl nodding and wiping her eyes with her sleeve. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. He just watched the woman he'd married do what she did best, steady chaos without needing to control it. Emily tugged on his sleeve. Can I ask you something? Sure, he said, crouching beside her. Do you think she's gonna be my real mom now? Kade felt his throat tighten, but he stayed calm. She already is, Em, not because we signed papers or had a wedding, because she loves you every day, and you love her too. Emily nodded slowly. I picked her, you really did. She took his hand and led him toward the front of the gallery. Then I think we should do something special for her. Like what? Like a surprise, a big one. He looked down at her. You got any ideas? Her eyes sparkled. So many. 3 days later, Sienna returned home to find a note taped to the front door in childlike block letters that read, Do not enter until you count to 100. She laughed softly and played along, counting under her breath as she waited on the stoop with a bouquet of tulips tucked under one arm. When she finally opened the door, soft music played from the living room. Candles flickered on every surface, and in the center of the room, a blanket fort massive, elaborate, and lit with fairy lights stood like a shimmering temple to imagination. Kade stepped out from behind it, wiping his hands on a towel. Welcome to Fort Forever, she blinked. What? It's a permanent construction. Emily designed it. You did all this. I just followed her lead, he said. She wanted to show you what love looks like. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked around. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Emily crawled into her lap. Do you like it? I love it, Sienna whispered, kissing her forehead, then turning to Kade. You two are my whole heart. He leaned in and kissed her, slow and certain. And you're ours. That night, after Emily fell asleep in the fort tangled in a blanket and a half-eaten cookie still in her hand, Kade and Sienna lay beside her, whispering under the soft glow of the lights. I've been thinking, he said. Dangerous, she teased. I want to take your name, she blinked in surprise. You do? Not for me, for her. So when she starts school next fall, we're all the same team, one name, one family. Sienna reached for his hand beneath the blanket. Then let's do it. Later, she rested her head on his chest, listening to the soft rhythm of his heart, and felt something she'd never thought she'd have, peace. Not the kind that came with silence or solitude, but the kind that came with knowing no matter how loud life got, love would always be louder. 6 months later, they stood in front of a small crowd gathered at the community garden on the corner of their block. A hand-painted sign hung above the gate, the Westwood Winslow Garden. Sienna knelt beside Emily as she planted the first flower, a sunflower, bright and stubborn. It's gonna grow tall, Emily said confidently. Kade leaned down and kissed Sienna's shoulder. Just like you. They turned to the crowd of neighbors, friends, and new family, all there to celebrate the garden Sienna had funded and Kade had built. A space for kids to learn, for seniors to sit, for the neighborhood to grow just like them. Later that evening, as twilight settled over the city and laughter echoed from the garden below, Kade pulled Sienna close on the rooftop of the brownstone. I never thought I'd have this, he said quietly. You built it, she whispered. With your hands. With your heart. He looked at her, the woman who'd stepped into his life with heels and secrets and turned everything he knew about love inside out. I love you, he said. She smiled and kissed him under the fading light, with the city below and their daughter asleep inside the home they made together. I love you too, she whispered. Always. And this time neither of them had to fall to find it. This time they rose, together, forever.